like, subscribe, and share. A terrifying lakeside cabin horror story. The summer of my 12th year was supposed to be filled with sunshine, laughter, and the carefree joys of childhood. Instead, it morphed into a haunting experience I would carry with me for the rest of my life. My friend Greg had invited me to spend a week at his family's lakeside cabin, a sprawling wooden structure nestled among tall pines, their needles whispering secrets in the breeze. I was excited, having known Greg since kindergarten. Little did I know that this trip would lead me to confront fears I had never imagined. As we drove up the winding road to the cabin, I felt a tingle of anticipation mixed with trepidation. The woods grew denser, the sunlight dimmer, as if the trees were conspiring to keep their secrets hidden. When we arrived, I was immediately struck by the contrast of the warm, inviting interior against the eerie silence that enveloped the surroundings. Greg's dad greeted us with his usual joviality, but I noticed a strange tension in the air, as if something was waiting to unfold. The first night was relatively uneventful, filled with games of cards and laughter echoing through the cabin. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a chill swept through the room. I excused myself early, feeling an inexplicable weight settle on my chest. Climbing into the cozy bunk bed in the corner of the shared room, I attempted to shake off the feeling of dread. Around midnight, I awoke suddenly, my heart racing. It took a moment to realize that I wasn't just feeling uneasy. I could hear faint whispers in the stillness. They were so soft that I wondered if I was dreaming. Straining to listen, I thought I heard my name being called, but the words were indistinguishable. Was it Greg playing a prank? The thought unsettled me further. I lay frozen in my bed, debating whether to call out or remain silent. After what felt like hours, the whispering stopped, and I drifted into a restless sleep, haunted by dreams I couldn't remember. The next morning, I brushed off the incident, thinking it was just my imagination running wild. However, the memory lingered, like a shadow at the edge of my mind. The following day was filled with typical summer activities: swimming, fishing, and exploring the woods. Yet, as night fell again, I felt the weight of dread returning. The evening was lively, filled with storytelling and s'mores by the fire, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When bedtime rolled around, I found myself more anxious than before. As I lay in bed that night, the cabin seemed to quiet, the darkness to thick. I closed my eyes, willing sleep to come, but it eluded me. Then, the whispers began again, soft, almost soothing, but with an underlying tension that set my nerves on edge. I recognized that the source seemed to be coming from Mark's bed, the top bunk across the room. I turned my head slightly, trying to see if he was awake, but he appeared to be asleep, his back turned to me. The whispers grew louder, forming into unintelligible sentences that danced mockingly around my mind. Fear coursed through me, and I fought the urge to call out, terrified of revealing that I was awake. I focused on blocking it out, pressing my pillow against my ears, but the sound seeped through, wrapping around my thoughts like tendrils of smoke. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I fell into a fitful sleep. The next morning, I tried to dismiss the night's events. Greg and I ventured outside, where the sunlight painted everything in warm hues. Yet, the memory of the whispers haunted me. I found myself stealing glances at Mark, who seemed normal, laughing and joking with the others. But something felt off. His eyes, dark and unfocused, occasionally darted around the room as if he were scanning for something unseen. That afternoon, we were playing a game in the yard when Mark announced he needed to use the bathroom. Minutes turned into an eternity, and as I glanced back at the cabin, I was startled to see him staring out of a second-floor window. I blinked, confusion washing over me. Greg's house didn't have a second floor. My heart raced as I turned to ask Greg about it, but he was engrossed in the game. Just then, Mark reappeared, laughing, and completely unaware of my rising anxiety. I shook off my concerns, convincing myself I was imagining things. But when dinner came and I was offered a plate of food, I found I had lost my appetite. I feigned illness, claiming I needed rest, but in truth, my mind was racing with questions. That night, I lay in bed, tormented by curiosity. I needed to know if there was something more to Mark's behavior, something deeper than just a strange quirk. As the whispers returned, I felt a surge of determination. I got out of bed, my heart pounding, and tiptoed toward Mark's bunk. Searching through his belongings, I came across my Barcelona cap, which I had thought lost forever. Digging deeper, I uncovered a collection of my personal items: a nail clipper, an extra toothbrush, and most disturbing of all, a pair of my underwear. Panic surged within me, and I stumbled backward, my breath hitching in my throat. And then I found the notebook. It was unassuming, yet I felt an electric pulse run through my fingers as I opened it. The pages were filled with intricate drawings, some so aggressive they had torn through the paper. My heart sank as I recognized the disturbing images: monsters, grotesque creatures, and violent acts that made my stomach churn. I could hardly believe what I was seeing, but then I turned to a page that made my blood run cold. There, in jagged lines, was a drawing of me on a cross, missing legs. Below it, in chaotic scrawls, was my name repeated 100 times. I felt bile rise in my throat. This wasn't just a notebook. It was a window into a dark mind. Overwhelmed, I realized I had to show Greg's dad what I found. I quietly placed the notebook back in Mark's duffel and returned to my bed, my heart racing. The next morning, as everyone gathered for breakfast, I pulled Greg's dad aside, my voice trembling as I explained everything: the whispers, the missing items, the drawings. He listened, his face shifting from confusion to concern. When I revealed the notebook, his expression darkened, and I could tell he was struggling to process the horror of what I had discovered. Without a word, he took the notebook from me and glanced through the pages, his eyes widening with disbelief. "We need to talk to Mark's parents," he finally said, his voice steady but firm. "This isn't something we can ignore." Yet, as we prepared to confront Mark, a sense of dread washed over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was watching us, that he knew what we were planning. Just then, I spotted him through the window, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. When Mark's dad arrived, he seemed disinterested in our concerns. He dismissed the situation as childish pranks and teenage imagination. But Greg's dad insisted on taking action, and we began packing our things, the atmosphere thick with tension. As I loaded my suitcase into the car, I caught sight of Mark standing by the cabin, his expression inscrutable. I felt a chill run down my spine. It was as if he were silently warning me to keep quiet, to forget what I had discovered. But I couldn't unsee the darkness I had glimpsed into his mind. On the way home, Greg's dad turned to me, his voice serious. "Don't mention this to your parents," he instructed. "We don't want to cause any unnecessary panic." I nodded, though inside I felt a storm of emotions battling for control. Once I got home, the weight of the experience crashed down on me. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I broke down, tears streaming down my face as I recounted everything to my parents. Their expressions shifted from concern to outrage as they heard about the notebook and Mark's unsettling behavior. They called the police immediately. When the officers arrived, I felt a strange mix of relief and fear. I was grateful that someone was taking my concerns seriously, but the reality of the situation loomed large. I showed them the page I had torn from Mark's notebook, the one that had struck me with such horror. It was enough for them to act swiftly. The police secured a warrant to search Mark's house. They found the rest of the notebook, along with other disturbing items that confirmed my worst fears about Mark's mental state. I didn't see him again after that day, His family moved away shortly after, leaving no trace behind. Greg and I lost touch, our friendship fracturing under the weight of unspoken trauma. I often wondered what happened to Mark, if he received help or if he continued down a darker path. Years passed, and I thought I had left that summer behind. But then, out of the blue, I received an anonymous letter in the mail. My heart raced as I opened it, recognizing my stolen pen nestled inside. The letter simply read, "I remember everything." A chill crawled down my spine. How had Mark found me? Why now? The unease I thought I had buried resurfaced, and I found myself contemplating a drastic change, switching apartments, changing my life in some desperate attempt to escape the shadows of my past. In the days that followed, I wrestled with my fear and anxiety. I spoke to a therapist who helped me process the trauma of that summer, encouraging me to confront my past rather than run from it. It was during these sessions that I realized I wasn't just afraid of Mark. I was afraid of the darkness within myself that I had glimpsed through his drawings. The experience taught me the importance of facing fears, of seeking help when confronted with the unknown. I reached out to Greg, and we began to reconnect, sharing our own perspectives on that harrowing summer. It was cathartic, a step toward healing. Though I never heard from Mark again, I learned that I couldn't let his actions define me. The whispers in the night faded over time, replaced by the soothing sounds of laughter and friendship. The darkness was still there, lurking at the edges, but I had learned to embrace the light, choosing to move forward rather than remain trapped in the past. As I sit here writing this, I can finally look back on that summer not just as a nightmare but as a turning point. A moment that forced me to confront my fears, seek help, and ultimately find strength in vulnerability. And while I may never fully understand Mark's intentions or the darkness that lay within him, I now know the importance of listening to the whispers, both the ones that haunt and the ones that guide us toward healing.